everyone. If I can have your attention. I know we are now standing room only. Welcome to the 2018 Election Forum presented by the League of Women Voters of the San Juans. You are here tonight because you are going to vote in the upcoming election and want to be an informed voter, so thank you. We have presented nonpartisan public forums for over 20 years here in San Juan County, allowing candidates to state their position and answer questions. I'm Claire Kelm, this year's Vice President of our local league. Barbara Sharp, our President, is in Ireland, so I'm standing in for her. As many of you already know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. As an organization, the League does not support or oppose candidates for public office. We do advocate on those issues chosen by the membership for study and action to reach a consensus. I received my Washington State Voters pamphlet yesterday. You probably all did too. And the ballots will be mailed next week. They need to be mailed or dropped in the ballot box by November 6th. And I just have a word for you about the mailing of your ballot if you're going to take it to the post office. You no longer need to put a stamp on it, but if you're kind of a last-minute voter, you've got to get it in the post office by 3 p.m. to get the postmark on it of November 6th. If you want to drop it in the ballot box, you get till 8 p.m. So probably the best thing to do is be an early voter and not have to worry about those times. And to help you be an early voter, the League of Women Voters has a website, vote411.org. And if you go on that, you can find out about all of the issues and candidates that are running in your area, and it gives you even some answers to questions, both candidates answering the questions side by side, kind of like they're going to be doing here live tonight.
Okay, if we open these doors?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, feeling a little warm here, are we? Okay. At this time, we are passing a basket around to collect donations to help defray our costs in putting on these forums. So thank you for whatever you can give. I want to introduce to you Tom Muncy, who's sitting over here. He is videotaping the forum tonight. Tom's waving at you. And just in a couple of days, I will be able to email to members the link that will allow you to view this forum. And this would be a great opportunity to email it to any of your friends who were not here tonight, and they can see it, they can watch it again and again, and really decide how they want to vote. And if you want to join League and be on that wonderful mailing list that gets sent out to our members, there are some brochures in the back, and you can see how to join. The link will also be posted on our Facebook page, so that means everybody can find it, we hope. One last thing. It's still possible to register to vote in the November 6th election. You have to do it in person at the elections office. So if you know of anyone who is not yet registered, please urge them to register. They can do this in person up to October 29th. And please urge everyone you know to vote. Now I'm going to turn the forum over to our Voter Services Chair, Shireen Hale, who will introduce the candidates who are here tonight and the format of the forum.
Thank you. Okay, so the approach we're using tonight is that each of our candidates, we're covering 4 races. Each of our candidates will start with 3 minutes for opening remarks. Then we'll take questions from the audience, and for each question they'll each have 2 minutes to answer. And then at the end, they'll each have 2 minutes for closing remarks. We have a timer up front who will let them know when they're down to 1 minute and 30 seconds and stop. So if you see me indicating they need to stop, it's because they've run out of time and the stop sign is up. Before we get started, we do have a couple of candidates that are in races that are not being covered tonight. Katie Loring is in the back here, and She's available to answer questions if you want to stay and visit with her afterwards. She's running unopposed for Superior Court. And Tom Sequine, where did you go? Also over here. He's running for Court of Appeals. And he's also here to answer questions if you'd like to visit with him after the forum. Okay, so with that, I think we'll get started with the Legislative District 40 candidates. And let's see, our candidates for this race are Deborah Lekanoff. Did I say that right? Perfect. I had trouble last time. Deborah Lekanoff and Michael Petrish. And let's start with Deborah for her 3-minute opening remarks.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Lekanoff. I have great honor to say thank you. Thank you for welcoming me into your homelands here in the San Juan Islands. I'm running for Washington State House of Representatives in the 40th LD. It's a great honor to be out here in the place in the heartlands of Washington State. I don't believe Washington State quite understands how pristine and how elite it is to say the Salish Sea is part of our home. Maybe all together we can say the Salish Sea is part of my home. How great that feels. I'm going to be honored to be able to represent all of you. I have a Tlingit from Southeast Alaska and I'm Aleut from Southwest Alaska. I understand the very values of the shorelines, the resources, and also how difficult it can be for rural communities to be able to build their economies, looking for economic prosperity, jobs, and making those decisions with environmental integrity. You know, I'm going to talk about real quick my 3 platforms. Transportation is important to me. I have said in the very beginning, ferries is a big issue. We should be proud to say we run one of the most elite transportation models here in Washington State. Can we do better? We can do better. I've worked on transportation infrastructure in my 16 years of serving in governmental affairs for a Swinomish tribe. I have worked in governmental services across all issues from affordable health care to housing to environmental decisions, working on creating jobs and working with those areas that are important to provide governmental services to our tribe and to our local community. Education is my other platform. The very foundation of your communities is education. If you cannot build your children to be the leaders and community members of tomorrow, you will end up taking care of them for the rest of your lives. We've seen the displacement of educational funding for the past 10 years. We're going to put that money back in. We're going to work on early education as we once have. We're going to work on providing vocational training. Our children should be proud to say, I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician, I am a carpenter, I work for the union, I am a school teacher, I'm a doctor, and I'm a mom. I'm a mom. And I am also a small business owner. Last 2 areas, vessel traffic is a key area that I've worked on in the past 10 years. Some people like to say, oh my goodness, you're going to deal with telling folks that enough is enough on the Salish Sea. I'm going to work hard to make sure that we have the tugboats out here that we need without using that as mitigation for more growth on the Salish Sea for vessel traffic. I'm going to make darn sure that we have a rescue tugboat out here because when it takes 6 hours for a tugboat to get out here if there's a spill, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. I'm committed to working for all of you. I am thankful for the 41% of the vote that came, that helped me win the primary. I am honored and humbled at all times to serve all of you. So thank you. I'm Deborah. That's her.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Petrish. I'm a candidate for the 40th Legislative District for the state of Washington. A little background about myself, for those of you who don't know me. Born and raised in Anacortes. I have an interesting background in regards to have both a refugee and immigrant background. My dad's family were immigrants from Croatia in the late 1800s, early 1900s, ended up in Beller, Ohio in the coal mines. My grandfather was born there, learned Croatian growing up as a child, made his way out here to the state of Washington. Met my grandmother, who was from Concrete, and their family also from Croatia. Ironically, they ended up in the same part of the world. And then made their way to Anacortes, where my grandfather became a fisherman and eventually became a police officer in Anacortes and started the police guild in Anacortes. He was also a local interpreter for the local community that was Croatian speaking and in our courts. On my mom's side of the family, a little more stressful for her side of the family. We're refugees during World War II, so 5,000 miles, 5 years, 5 countries, 3 continents, 3 languages, none of which were English, to end up here. And they also ended up here in the San Juans, because it looks so much very similar to the Dalmatian coast where my family's from. So I had an interesting background growing up as a commercial fisherman, fished here in Puget Sound and also in the waters of Alaska, where Deborah's from, and have a great connection with the natives up in Alaska and as well as here in our community that we fished alongside of for years. A little background about myself and my qualifications for this position. I spent 4.5 years in Bosnia as an interpreter for NATO. When the Dayton Peace Accord was signed in 1995, Clinton administration said we're going to supply 25,000 American forces to the NATO mission of 50,000, and they were also going to need interpreters. And I was one of those individuals who went there to support the U.S. forces to bring peace in a nation in a part of the world that was ravaged by war and man's inhumanity to man. And the reason I mention that is that I was one of those individuals where we were given the peace agreement and said, go make this work. So I had to sit down at tables and negotiations with people that previously had been combatants on the battlefield. One instance, we had one conversation that we were in and one negotiation where one of the individuals that was sitting to my right was sitting in a house now occupied by a person directly across from the table from him, because they were forced to leave each other's homes during the war. So there was a little animosity, a little confrontation. So I have the ability to know what it's like to sit down and come up with a deal that works for everybody, even as difficult as it may be. I'm also a union carpenter, and I take great pride in that because I represent 6 western states, Alaska, Washington, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. 25,000 of our members and their families. I also represent the 5 northern counties of the state of Washington, Local 70 out of Mount Vernon. And it is my due diligence, as I am a trustee to my local, to oversee the spending of our local and how our members' money is spent. I will have that same diligence for the taxpayers of the state of Washington if you make me your representative, and I'm here to ask for your vote, and thank you for your time.
Okay, why don't you hang on to that microphone and we'll have you take the first question.
Okay.
Questions from Michael and Deborah? Nope, there's one over here. Okay.
So in a couple of weeks, I get to loan my father about $1,200 so he can pay property taxes. Can either of you talk about how happy you are with the way that Washington State funds itself?
Well, the state of Washington, in my personal opinion, as a humble carpenter, we don't have a revenue problem as much as have as a spending problem. I'm opposed to raising taxes for any of us in this room, and that's across the board. I am not in favor of an income tax. I'm not in favor of a capital gains tax. I am not in favor of B&O tax. I believe that those of us that believe in funding education, that believe in funding our first responders, those are the things we really need to understand how that money is spent and spent wisely. Just as I was talking about, I am a trustee to my local. I overlook how the money is spent. We have to prioritize how we spend our money. I'm not a real big fan of increasing property taxes, as anybody who's on a fixed income knows that the more increase you increase in property taxes, the less availability you have for everything else necessary to pay your monthly bills. So as far as the state of Washington, I'm not a fan at all of increasing spending in regards to taxes.
Sorry. I do agree. You know, we've got a $1,200 property tax. I came out here when I first started and said there are 2 areas I want to be able to address. 3. I want to be able to take a look at Washington State's tax, and let's talk about tax reform. Senior citizens are paying some of the highest taxes of property taxes. When it comes to levy for schools, our senior citizens are paying that. We take care of our teachers and we take care of our senior citizens. That's who we are, where I come from, and how I was raised. As your state legislator, sir, I will be committed to working on tax reform. I want to take a look at the senior citizens property tax, which Chris Litton has already laid out with Representative Ormsby, who will also be addressing it. It's been put on the table. I've been asked to pick that back up. B&O taxes, our small business owners are the very backs and the roots and the foundation of many of our communities. We need to remove that B&O tax. Then again, we come along to those responsibilities. We need to pay for education, infrastructure, ferries, roads. We too need to find a better way of spending our money and find a better way of approaching that. You know, in 16 years, I've had to manage budgets working in the government I worked for at the congressional, at the federal, at the tribal, and at the local level. Understanding and bringing those years of experience of managing, stretching your dollar and making it work and prioritizing what's important. I will say this, when it comes to coming back to talk about tax reform, This is where my conversation happens, is at the tables of the 40th. This is who I work for, this is who I plan to hear and understand, and this is where I plan to take your voices down to Olympia with me. You tell me what's best to be done, and I'll do my best to make sure it's implemented there in Olympia for you.
Okay, another question? In the back?
This question is from Michael. Michael, you've mentioned that you're active, you're a labor man, you're in a union, you're active in that union, and yet you're running as a Republican, and their policies have been to undermine unions and the right to organize for the last couple of decades. Are you in agreement with the party policies, or do you hope to change their attitude towards organized labor?
That's a great question, because I've had that question many times. I joined this race because of the attack of the extremist environmentalist movement of the Democratic Party. And the reason I mention that is that a lot of our members work within Puget Sound. A lot of them work in the refineries here in Puget Sound, but they also work in the Navy base. They also work in some of the largest projects up and down the I-5 corridor. I've worked from the Canadian border all the way down to south of Olympia on projects. And when you ask me about why I'm running as a Republican, right now, the construction trades, which I'm a part of, the carpenters, the ironworkers, the electricians, the pipe fitters, the laborers, and the operating engineers, we have more in common with the Republican Party right now than we do with the Democrats. And some people have a hard time believing that. Well, that is the absolute truth. You mentioned that conversation. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with other Republicans because we've already started that conversation. They understand that to build infrastructure, you have to have the people that have the experience and the knowledge to do that. We are those people that do it. Now, when it comes to working against labor unions, I'm going to be the first one I'm going to torpedo anything that has to do with right to work. Because it lowers the wages across the board for everybody. It doesn't mean union or non-union. It lowers wages, it lowers salaries, and it lowers compensation. You look at every state in this country that has instituted right to work, and the wages are in the toilet. I entered this race to represent the working class, and I will. I happen to have conservative value, but I believe in labor unions and what they've done for the worker in this country, and what it has done to this country. Organized labor built America. I'm a part of it, and I'm a dues-paying, proud member of the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I'm a carpenter first and foremost. That's why I got in this race.
Deborah, would you like to respond?
I'd be happy to. Thank you to my unions. Unions are the very foundation of our communities on the mainland there and out here. Many unions have endorsed me because they know that I see unions as families. For me and my community, small town community like you, we always have someone in our hand. We have those who have built us in the front hand and those children yet to come in the back hand. Unions are built in that same manner. I have IBEW, Local 77, UAFF 106, LEIUs, our steelworkers, our pipe fitters, SEIU 775, our very caregivers, our teachers, WEA, and the Teamsters. My list of endorsements for unions are strong because I believe that we need to make sure we take care of them as they take care of us. So I raise my hands to the question. Thank you very much. Let's keep families in mind, and let's make sure that our jobs are spread throughout the whole entire Washington state.
Hang on to the line. Okay. I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your position on gun safety and legislation that might address gun safety issues?
I'll be very quick. I shared this story out here. I come from a hunting and fishing family. My daughter, who's 14, is a Washington State archer champion. We grew up knowing the value of what it is to have weaponry in our home. We are gun safety protectors and educators. However, when Emma's dad, who's 14, has to stand there and watch my little girl show her dad how she's supposed to hide underneath the table and get behind a chair, I'd never seen a grown man almost come to tears, especially David, who I've known for 30 years. I am endorsed by Moms Demand Action. I'm a mom who seriously has taken into consideration the fear for our grandchildren and our children. I do not want to have my daughter teaching my granddaughter and my grandson to hide underneath the table, or to my girls tell me, Dad, am I supposed to hide in the room and wait for him or her to wait for them to come get me? Or do I jump out the window? And if I jump out the window, Dad, where do I go? This is LaConner. I support gun safety. I believe that you need to be a responsible owner, but I know there are people out there who should not have guns, and I want to protect my little girl and my grandchildren to come, such as many of you.
Well, to start off with, pardon me, I'm opposed to 1639, the gun initiative. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background in regards to experience in Bosnia. Just a few numbers of what happened in Bosnia. You had 300,000 refugees and 300,000 dead, 1.5 million refugees. This is what happens in a country where you can't defend yourself against your own government and the neighbors that don't like you very much. Anybody hear of a gun-free zone? Anybody? In Bosnia, they were called safe havens. There was a town called Srebrenica, where 8,000 young Muslim men and boys were hurdled up into cars and trucks and taken to local warehouses and machine gunned. I happened to talk to one of those survivors who was there, was wounded, landed, had bodies land on top of him. Minutes, everybody piled back into the vehicles and drove off. About 15 minutes, half hour later, trucks came back and said, "We're here from the Red Cross, we're here to help." And people started saying, "I need help, I'm wounded," moaning and groaning, and they shot him again. That individual spent the better part of 12 hours with the blood of his fellow neighbors and countrymen running over him. Later that night, crawled out, walked 27 kilometers to Tuzla, and lived to tell a story. Young girls and women were dragged out of their homes and was raped, was used as a weapon against them. I think those women would have had a second opinion had they had a firearm in their house to protect themselves. I'm a full believer in the Second Amendment and personal experience, and with the smell of a mass grave, you never forget.
Any other questions for our legislative District 40 candidates? Lovell.
So this is a question for Michael Peters. Can you talk about how you would address oil spill risk for major commercial shipping as the legislature?
Oh, absolutely. I firmly believe we need to continue what we have already with tugs guiding tankers that come into Puget Sound. Of course, we don't allow super tankers into Puget Sound. I fully support of protecting the environment we live. I was born and raised here. This is my Anacortes, Fidalgo Island, the San Juans. People come from all over the world to come here. I am fully dedicated to protecting our environment and the pristine waters of Puget Sound. This is our home. This is where we live. I take my kids down to a low tide, like when I was a kid, go out and underneath look at the pilings and show them the starfish and the sea anemones, roll rocks over it, look at the crab, and these are education. This is what I was a part of as a child. So yes, I'm absolutely dedicated to preventing that from happening. Now, unfortunately, if we do have an event where there is a release of any kind of oil, it could be diesel, it could be anything, we need to have the proper procedures and protections in place to respond to those instances. And we have to have training to do that, which we have. Am I willing to spend more money to do that, to protect it? Absolutely. I'm dedicated. This is my home. This is where I live. For some reason, people think that I'm not in favor of the environment. I'm completely dedicated to what I do here. Just to make sure we all understand each other. This is our home. This is where we live. And I'm fully dedicated to it.
Thank you. I think I shared my experience earlier, and thank you for sharing that. We actually were in a transboundary vessel traffic and oil spill meeting this last week together. Many of you may have seen us there or heard about it. It was an extraordinary opportunity of working on transboundary oil spill and vessel track policy, science, and regulatory from the federal, state, provincial, tribal, and First Nations side with our local governments. Local governments such as the San Juan County, our organizations out here in the San Juan said, you know what, we really want to talk about enough is enough. We out here in the islands, this is our home, this is our front yard. The Salish Sea is our front yard. It is who and what we've become as we call this place home. I strongly believe that it is time for us to take better care of this beautiful place across the nation. You have endorsements I have endorsements, and you have endorsements that say from Sally Jewell, the Department of Interior, one of the largest environmentalists across this nation, that says, we believe the Salish Sea is one of the most important, pristine areas in the United States. We're going to take care of it. I'm as committed as she is. Gina McCarthy, Obama, can we just say Obama one more time? His appointee, Gina McCarthy, was head of the EPA of administration. Dennis McClaren here for Region 10, both endorsing me. Jay Manning saying, you know what? The Salish Sea is going to stay as pristine as we can, and if you never need help, when Deborah's elected into the 40th, which we know she will be, we're going to come stand behind her and make sure the Salish Sea, your front yard, your backyard, and your home's taken care of. So thank you for the question, and I'm committed to making sure vessel traffic is addressed.
Okay, let's move on to closing remarks, and we'll have Michael go first for 2 minutes of closing remarks.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for being here. This is part of the process, and this is why we're here. Whether you agree with me or not, doesn't matter. I love everybody in this room because we're Americans, and this is what we do. This is part of the process where we can sit or stand and share our views. This is my home. This is where I grew up, and I'm dedicated to the people that live and pay taxes here in the 40th. I'm a union carpenter. In our local, we represent, and the Pacific Northwest Regional Council Carpenters, we represent every demographic there is in this country. White, brown, green, black, doesn't matter who you are, gay, straight, doesn't matter. I talk to those people every day. They brought these issues to me, and these are the people that asked me to run. So I'm representing not only my local, but the views of the people that live in our communities. It is my goal, God willing, that if you elect me to represent you in Olympia, I will be your voice. Your issues are my issues. We might disagree on some things, but we can have that conversation. Whether it be here in the San Juans, whether it be in Skagit County, or be it Whatcom. We have an incredible region with incredible people and incredible opportunity. I want to be your voice in Olympia because I believe I truly am the best candidate in this race to represent everybody that's here. I thank Deborah for being here to have the opportunity to share ideas. And this is what it's all about. So my name is Michael Petrish. I'm a candidate for the 40th Legislative District. I want to say thank you again for being here, and I ask for your vote.
You know, in closing, I'm just going to say a real, I represent all. I stand here, and if you close your eyes and you say, I want a home, I want to make sure my children have an education, I want clean water, I want clean air. If you take away the gender, you take away the color, we all want the same things. I'm committed to representing all. I want to represent our America, and as a first American of this great country, I will commit to representing you all. Our Native American people are still here. We strive, we grow, we overcome racism, we overcome hatred, we overcome everything that says you shouldn't be here today still. But I'm happy to say we share our homes with all of you. I'm excited to say thank you for taking care of the orcas. I sit on the governor's Southern Killer Whale Task Force to hear the diversity of voices that say, we are the orcas out here in the Salish Sea. We out here, our food systems are dying, we're dying. Our wetlands are dirty. You see it, you smell it every day. Thank you for taking care of the eagles, the eelgrass, the shorelines, the beaches. Thank you for always addressing salmon recovery. I am committed to all of you. I'm excited to be part of your community. Thank you for welcoming me in. Thank you for raising my daughter in the 40th, who is 14, who is chairing her youth council. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She is chairing her youth council in LaConner, and they're talking about what bills they want to be able to take down to Olympia. So I'm quite proud of our youth who I'm dedicated to, and thank you for being here, and thank you for the crowded room. Have a good evening.
Okay, let's give our legislative closing. Okay, so the next race is going to be the district court race. Okay, so we'll start with opening remarks, and Steve, I think we'll have you go first.
I think I've been first in every single
You've
forum
been
so
first in,
far.
the mic.
Just coincidental.
I have a request to turn the volume up, so we'll see if we can do that.
Test, test, test. Can everybody hear me? No, they're in the back. They're saying, turn it up.
Is that better?
Can you hear me now? They're saying yes.
Okay, go for it.
Well, first I want to thank the League for putting on these important forums. I want to thank you all for coming. What a great turnout. My name is Steve Brantley, and I'm running for District Court Judge. My wife and I began coming to the San Juan Islands 23 years ago when we were married. We moved here 12 years ago, and we moved here because we wanted to be a part of this community. We've raised 4 children here. We are still foster parents here, and we are heavily involved in community service here. Professionally, I graduated from the UW School of Law 12 years ago in the top 5% of my class. In San Juan County, for the first 2 years, I served as the Deputy Prosecutor for District Court. In the last 10, I have been a private attorney serving clients in criminal and civil matters. I also served 2 years half-time as a public defender, and I have some experience as a judge and commissioner pro tem. I am honored to be endorsed by all 3 of the district court judges in Whatcom and Island counties. These judges recognize the large differences in the breadth and length of experience between my opponent and me. My opponent graduated from law school 3 years ago and has had the job as deputy prosecutor for district court since then. I treasure the relationships I've had with my clients over the last 10 years. Through knowing them, sometimes at the worst times in their lives, I've developed a deep caring for the parties who are in our courts. It's not just about fact and law. Being in court is an emotional experience for these parties. I believe that working directly with clients is an important experience for a judge to have. Several of the clients I've had over the years have been referred to me by Safe San Juan's, formerly DB SAS. They know both candidates and they have endorsed my candidacy. Remember the next thing. I'm a little nervous, can you tell me? Let's see, I am honored to be, I said that already. I'm so sorry. It's an important job for an attorney to be confident. As you can tell, that's not working today. But I'm always aware of the complexity of our laws and the complexity of the cases that come before the courts. I think it's very important that judges are always striving to know better, to ask the right questions, to listen carefully, to not make decisions until they know it's the right decision to make. And I think these are important qualities for judges. Briefly, I've been endorsed by nearly every attorney that practices regularly in district court. They endorse me not because they want to win, because they care about fair proceedings and about having a judge that's experienced and compassionate. I want to thank you for listening to me this morning, this afternoon, this evening, and I hope for your vote. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Jewett, and I'm running for District Court Judge. And a lot of people who hear that, the first question they have is, what is District Court? So if you're not familiar, District Court is the lower court in San Juan County, handles misdemeanors like DUIs, assault in the 4th degree, criminal trespass, malicious mischief, these kinds of things. Small claims matters, which is less than $5,000. Certain types of civil lawsuits, infractions, certain types of anti-harassment orders. The next question is, well, then why do you want to be district court judge? Well, I'm really passionate about district court. I've been working here in the district court since 2015 as the deputy prosecutor who handles all the criminal matters for the district court, all those misdemeanors. And before that, as a law student, I worked in the King County District Court. And what I've seen working in district court is that even though these cases are small, they have a big impact on our community as a whole, and a huge impact on the individuals involved. And that means that it's important to get it right. It's important to take these cases seriously. Just because the crime is less severe or the dollar amount is less doesn't mean that it can change somebody's life. And so it's important to hold people accountable, It's important to take these cases seriously. But district court also, many people who come through district court, it may be their first time coming in contact with the criminal justice system. And because these cases are less severe crimes, there's actually a lot of opportunity in district court for meaningful change. There's an opportunity for people to turn their lives around. And we have a lot of times probation imposed and therapeutic conditions, and there have been success stories to come out of district court. People who have had that brush with coming into the criminal system and turn their lives around. And so I found it really rewarding to work in district court. So when I heard that Judge Andrew was retiring after 20 years of service, I knew that that's what I would like to do. And so the last question is, what makes me the right candidate for the job? Well, a lot of different things. First, I have the right experience. I have the most criminal trial experience and the most jury trial experience, the two candidates. I've been working in district court. I'm very knowledgeable about the types of cases that district court hears. I practice every week and sometimes daily when things are busy in the summertime. And it's about more than experience, though. It's also about what kind of a person do you want to hear your case? And what kind of judicial temperament a person should have who's going to be a judge. You're going to want someone who is open-minded, who is concerned about equality and treating everybody fairly, and making sure that everybody who comes through the courtroom is respected and treated with dignity. And that's something that I'm very passionate about ensuring for anyone who would come before me as district court judge. And that's why I'm asking you to vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, before we start with the questions, there are some special rules for district court, people running for district court, in that they can't answer questions they might decide in court. Probably won't come up, I just want to let you know in advance. Okay, questions for our candidates? Any questions?
We all got a little bit of legal exposure the last couple of weeks with the television performances of particularly Kavanaugh. I'm curious how a lawyer looked at that. What did you see? What if you were telling me to take a little bit more informed view of it, what would be involved in your instruction to me? I assume that you look at it differently if you've actually been in the law.
Well, I think that first I want to be clear that the judicial candidacy, our race is a nonpartisan race. And so we want to be careful that we're not talking about political or partisan things. But I think regardless of your party, one thing that was remarkable to the people who are interested in our legal system is how partisan and embittered things were on both sides in the Kavanaugh confirmation proceedings. And it's unfortunate because the strength of our country's judiciary is in its nonpartisan nature. That's what we rely on judges to do, to be the ones to decide, to stand between the parties and say, this is the law, this is the Constitution. And the fact of the matter is that it's political. And it has been political for a long time, especially on the national stage. I don't know that lawyers necessarily have a lot more insight into the proceedings than what everybody else saw play out. But what I think is something that we should all consider is that anybody who is going for judicial office, I think is a time to remind ourselves that we should be above the partisan. We should be above mudslinging and tearing each other down. And unfortunately, we're in a world where it's going to happen, but as judicial candidates, we want to be able to say that we can rise above and to stay above that and keep our cool. Thank you.
You know, it's easy to forget that the justice that was replaced, Justice Kennedy, was a Reagan appointee unanimously confirmed by the Senate. You know, this was back in a time when votes were largely unanimous for justice confirmations. Unfortunately, the Democrats decided to get rid of the filibuster for other than the Supreme Court judicial appointments, and the Republicans did that for Supreme Court appointments, and I think we're going to see more of what we saw in the last few weeks of what was really a very partisan battle. My biggest concern as an attorney is in the integrity of the Supreme Court. And that integrity is not based on anything but our belief in it. And the less we believe in that court, the harder it's going to be to hold this democracy together. And my biggest disappointment about all of what happened in the last few weeks is that belief in the Supreme Court just came down a notch. And I'm fearful that that's going to continue. I also will point out that everybody has an opinion about what happened 45, 35 years ago, but none of us can really know with 100% certainty what it is, what did happen. This is something that we deal with in court all the time. This is why we have burdens of proof that talk about not having perfect information. And I believe that there's enough information there that he should not have been confirmed. But more importantly, I believe that what he showed in that hearing, the second hearing, was enough that this was not a person that we would want as a justice of the United States. And the fact he was confirmed has lowered our belief in that court by that much, and I'm disappointed about that. Hopefully, we will do better in the future.
Another question? No questions? Oh, go ahead.
As someone who's, in my younger days, had a couple brushes with the law myself, which probably surprised a lot of people. I very much hear what you're saying, and so sometimes for our small community and everything else, there are many stressors here with housing, jobs, and families and things that can cause people to really do some things that they're really sorry for. And I just would like you to reflect a little bit on how you see that in a community like this where we all know each other. So
Steve, go first.
Well, it's a good question. So in district court, we deal with misdemeanors, and so we're not talking about the more serious felonies. I'm not going to address that in this comment. The primary purpose in district court with criminal matters is that when there's a conviction is that that person never commit a crime again. That's the biggest goal that we have. And what that takes depends on the individual. For some individuals, frankly, it does take jail time. Got to kick them in the rear in order to convince them that isn't necessary, they're not going to do that anymore. But for many, that's not true. And in fact, for some, jail time is actually going to make the matter worse. And you hit on that, I think, with your question. They lose their jobs. They can't support their families. There are economic consequences as well as consequences for their self-worth and with the people that they mix in the jail population. We have to keep that in mind. Also, just the court proceedings themselves can be a burden on defendants who are in court, and I think we should try to reduce that. We should not be using bail as much as we have, if we have alternatives. I would like to see our probation department have a pretrial supervision option that can be used in lieu of bail. We also need to be sure that the financial obligations of a defendant, even if there's no jail time or any other kind of incarceration or confinement, is such that that person can do that and then not essentially create the stressors you talked about and make everything worse. So I think we have to be very cognizant of the financial circumstances and the stresses that have brought that particular defendant to that place and make sure that we are addressing that person for who that person is with the goal that that person is never there again.
I grew up in a different background than a lot of lawyers, which is that I didn't come from a family of lawyers. I grew up in a working class family in Bremerton, and my dad is an auto body repairman, and my mom was a homemaker for a number of years, and then is working as a paraeducator at an elementary school and going back to school to get her degree. And so growing up in that environment, I know what it's like to be paycheck to paycheck. And granted, it was from the perspective of a child. I know I got sheltered from a lot of it, but I also know that it wouldn't have taken much for something to push our family off of our financial pedestal and into possibly losing our house or losing our car. And so I understand that there are, for some people, what may be considered a small fine in district court is not a small fine. And that for some people, those stressors and those factors in our lives can affect the way that we make choices in our everyday lives. And so I'm definitely in support of what we're already doing in district court and what actually has been happening statewide, which is conducting more thorough analysis about people's present and future ability to pay fines and imposing fewer fines and court fees. And I did want to mention just about the bail issue. In fact, in San Juan County, we have very low bail compared to other counties. And that's something that we already, I think our judges are very aware of, the burden that bail puts on people who are indigent or who can't afford it. But I think that what we want to be thinking about in terms of bail and financial obligations is making sure that there isn't an unfair impact on one portion of our island population, and that however we impose these things, we have a system that's fair and a system that addresses those concerns and financial concerns. Thank you.
Okay, if there's one more question, we'll take that and then move to closing remarks. Anybody have another? Yeah,
I'll try. So maybe you can educate me a little bit too about this. I did see a couple of kids go through school here, and they managed not to get caught with much. But my question then is about the drug crimes and what the sentences are for the drug crimes that you would be overhearing, and then where you fall on that range. If you could talk about that. And you mentioned something about how district court can help people really change their lives. So it seems like that would be a place there.
Yeah, so I should just start by saying that most drug crimes are felonies. So most drug crimes end up in Superior Court. And actually, that's part of the reason that the Superior Court judge, Judge Catherine Loring, has been developing a drug court to have a diversion program for offenders to get drug treatment in order to reduce some of their charges or maybe get them dismissed if they're successful. District court is a little bit different because, in terms of drugs, because we do have drug-related crimes. Theft sometimes is ultimately drug-related. We have DUIs that are drug-related, those kinds of things. But, well, first of all, often the sentences are very, the probation, it typically would include getting substance abuse treatment and follow that treatment, but only if the drug problem is brought to the court's attention. So sometimes it's not always immediately obvious. Somebody is stealing things to sell them for drugs, and they would have to bring that forward. And that might really not be in their best interest in terms of the legal potential consequences if they don't follow through with treatment. There can be more sanctions if they get ordered to do drug treatment and then don't follow through. So I think in district court, what we try to do is we try for the people who have either it's obvious that there's a drug or alcohol problem, or that they bring through their attorney to the attention of the court that they feel this was a drug alcohol related problem, providing an avenue for them to get substance abuse treatment and to potentially have less jail or other sanctions if they're able to comply with treatment. Unfortunately, the ultimate question about the drug problem in our county is going to be something beyond what the district court judge would probably handle, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions for the other candidates who are going to be here tonight. I think that's something that our legislature is going to have to address, but to the extent that we can in district court, we try.
Of course, Ms. Jewett's correct that most drug crime is a Superior Court matter. We do tend to find out in most cases when someone is committing crime because of a drug problem. It doesn't always happen, but we usually do. When we do, we have the opportunity to try to address that problem now instead of when that person is now faced with a felony because they have possession of heroin or whatever. Not a simple thing. In the past, the solution has been to order a substance abuse evaluation, and you have to follow recommended treatment, and that's done in lieu of jail time, and then we kind of make sure that they do that. There are, in other counties, some innovations that are going on in probation. We haven't been bringing them here, and that's something that I want to do. Not all of them are going to be applicable here. We're small. We don't have the funding that other counties have, and we don't have the economies of scale that the other counties have, but we do have an excellent probation department here in district court. And we can use that probation department to increase the touch, the amount of, the frequency of contact with folks that are struggling with addiction, to try to encourage them to take care of it. It's not always going to work. Anybody knows a heroin addict, for example, oftentimes they don't want to get better. And sometimes they have to hit a low, so it's not a panacea. But we can import ideas here. I was in Whatcom County talking to the probation department there, and hearing about the things that they are doing that we aren't doing here. We should try to bring some of those things here to help those people. And that's the best we can do right now in district court. As the state of the art gets better, we should bring that here too. We're learning, and hopefully over time we're going to be able to improve our ability to prevent those people from coming back, to get them off the drugs.
All right, let's move to closing remarks, and we'll have Carolyn go first.
It's hard to introduce yourself to an entire room of people and tell them how great you are and why they should vote for you, and feel like you're actually able to make a personal connection to the people that you're talking to. And I'm trying right now to make that personal connection because I really care about district court. I really do. That's why I work there. That's why I decided to go into the public sector. That's why I'm not going to keep a practice on the side if I'm the judge, even though that's permitted. I'm going to dedicate myself 100% to district court. And I really care about this community. I really do. I love living on San Juan Island, and it's like nowhere else I've ever lived. And I'm asking you for the opportunity to serve San Juan Island and Orcas Island and Lopez Island and all the other islands in San Juan County, because that's what I'm passionate about, and that's why I'm here. I'm going to have an open house next week on Tuesday here at the Grange from 5 to 6:30. I'm going to be here. Anybody can come, invite your friends, and you can have a chance to talk to me a little bit more personally and ask me any questions that you think of later or that you didn't get a chance to ask. I invite you to come and talk to me and meet me, and I'd love to meet you, because what I want to do is to serve the county and to serve justice the best that I can. Thank you.
Well, I'll start seconding Ms. Jewett that it is hard to stand up here and talk with you all, and I'm uncharacteristically nervous. I don't talk about myself that much. Those who know me, I don't like talking about myself. I like talking about other things. I like talking about my clients, for example. And I really do care about what happens in our courts. I always knew that when I became an attorney, I wanted to do it because I care so much about our justice system. It is a cornerstone of our democracy, and I wanted to do something that was of that caliber, that loftiness, you might say. What I didn't fully appreciate when I started is how important it is our judges are to that system of justice. We rely almost entirely on their expertise, their integrity, their ability to do the justice that we care about so much in order to make that work. And I didn't realize that when I first started out. I care more about who sits on our benches than I care about anything else in our profession. In fact, my success as an attorney is a large part due to the good judges we've had in this county. Not just my own abilities, it is a large part to do with our judges, and I care a great deal about that. I would not be running a campaign, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do, if I didn't care so much about that I wasn't asking you to vote for me in that race and for this position. I ask you to look at the endorsements. I think they tell the tale. You've got district court judges who are endorsing me because of my experience, Safe San Juans, because of my compassion, and the attorneys that practice in district court because of my, because they think I should be the judge before them. I encourage you to call me. We have rack cards in the back. I'd love to talk to you. I'll be here as long as there are people to talk to. And I really ask you for my vote on November 6th. And be sure to vote. Thank you.
Okay, sheriff candidates, where are you? Okay, we'll start with 3-minute statement from each of them. I think we'll start with Ronald first. Oh, the mic.
That's all right. All right, thank you all for coming. I'm going to read from a statement or we'll be here all night. 4 years ago, I ran for this office and vowed to improve community relations and change the vision of the sheriff's office. 4 years later, I feel like we've achieved those goals. We now have an office filled with pride in the job we do, one of service to the community, and a new culture of community-oriented policing. I've made it my mission to be out in public, accessible, and listening to whatever you have to say, what your concerns are, and how my office can address them. I've worked hard to build solid relations in the community and encourage open communication about everything we're involved in, and I'm always transparent. I am truly available 24/7, 365 days a year. I answer questions all hours from wherever I am. People are shocked to actually get to speak to me directly and not an answering machine or an empty office. I will always make time to listen. It is important to me that I continue to be there for the community and hear your concerns. I promised to improve the morale of the office, and I have. We changed the culture by being positive and professional and providing clear goals and expectations. The improved culture has helped us to attract and hire some amazing new officers, dispatchers, and support personnel. I'll continue to look for the community-oriented people we need to fill out our staff. I'm proud to say that once again, I've received the San Juan Sheriff's Guild's overwhelming endorsement, this time for my re-election. I've also received the San Juan County Democratic Party's overwhelming endorsement for my re-election. I think these endorsements speak volumes about the work we've done and will continue to do for this community. Looking forward towards the next 4 years, we continue to have some big challenges facing us. Drugs, domestic violence, sexual assault affect us all in some way, and we need a coordinated multi-agency effort to help combat them. I'm proud executive board member of the San Juan Prevention Coalition and the Orcas Coalition for Youth, as well as Safe San Juans. These positions are important to me. I'm able to hear about issues these fine agencies face and offer suggestions on how we can work together to solve them. Combating drugs is one of our top priorities. I've worked closely with the county on my budget to gain approval for a new canine. I've also requested a third detective to dedicate to drugs and drug crimes. I continue to look for ways to work more efficiently, effectively, and in conjunction with the courts and support agencies. My office will support efforts to create the Therapeutic Drug Court, a nationally proven tool to effectuate change with the addiction population and other prevention and rehabilitation services offered by our local agencies. I'm honored to have served you for the last 4 years. I thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to serving another 4.
Thank you for having this forum today. I'm Jeff Asher. I've worked as a deputy sheriff with the sheriff's office since time in beginning. I've been here for about 33 years, and during those 33 years I've worked as a dispatcher, deputy, detective, lead detective. I worked in the narcotics field. I've worked undercover operations. I know a lot about narcotics, probably more than some of the addicts do. Narcotics is a tricky thing. In this community, we have the influx of drugs, people that are bringing their poisons into our community. Then we have the people that are addicted to drugs, and it's an addiction. I think I heard somebody say they want to just continue to use heroin or whatever, but the people that I meet, they're not happy. They're not happy to be on drugs. You see, we have problems up here in Kanaka Bay and now next to Consignment Treasure, people living on the land on heroin. Why are they there? They're addicted to drugs. There's a lot of people that come through our jail, they want off. It's difficult. And when somebody says we want to get off drugs, we got to jump on it. We got to make that happen. We got to be really receptive. So we've got two things. We've got the addiction going on, and then we've got the supply. We need to go after the supply. We've let this go on for too long, and it's gotten too strong. And by the time you have such a strong influx of drugs, it keeps the addiction going. So my proposal is we break it off at the other end. We spend just as much time as we do enforcing and making contact with a lot of these people that are addicted. Have them on a regular basis tell us how you're doing, tell us how you're doing. Are you ready to get off today? Are you ready to get off today? If I can break that up at this end and go after these people that are bringing it at the other end, I think we'll be far better off. There's a number of things I would like to do in January of 2019. I'd like to have a Citizens Advisory Board that will keep more transparency in the Sheriff's Office, help us work on problematic things in this community, and have more oversight into the office. That's one. Two, an Explorer program for our youth on all 3 islands. Make it a little bit more competitive and give kids a little bit more mentoring that's going on and interface into the schools a little bit better. The other thing is a standardized program to do background checks. Just like they do in some of the other communities, they've done a lot of research in what exactly is needed so that we can go back at any given time and say, yes, we did in fact do everything, and this is in fact what we did. Fourth, I'd like to have frequent staff meetings. I want to be able to see the employee and tell them what's going on and what I expect in the community. Because there is a certain way we do business here on San Juan, a different way over on Orcas and Lopez. These are different communities. I want to be able to look the people in the eye that are working and make sure they have that in hand. Thank you.
Okay, questions for our sheriff candidates?
Hi. Well, first of all, I want to thank you both. You both have a job that I wouldn't want. Mr. Asher, or Detective Asher, you've run 4 times, because I've been here 40 years. You've run for the sheriff's position for 4 times. And for 4 times, you've not been supported by the Sheriff's Guild, and including this time. This time, Sheriff Krebs got, I think out of 26 people in the Guild, got the votes of 22 people, 3 abstained, and 1 was for you, which I assume was you. Can you both address this, why this is for 4 different elections that you have not been supported by the Sheriff's Guild? Maybe if you could address it first, I'd appreciate that.
Oh, first of all, this is the 3rd time. You know, being the sheriff of the community, you have a lot of perks. You're able to hold out promotions. You'll be able to give people specialized training. People are indebted to you for certain things you've done through the years. And in this particular administration, they've washed out a lot of the senior officers, people that have been there a long time. Most of the officers that have voted on that, I have not met. I have not worked with. And you got to ask yourself, well, why is that? Why are they voting that way? Well, you have the sheriff and the undersheriff and the sergeants who all are indebted here, working these people over in hopes that they can go along to get along. And that's how it always is. That's how it is every single time. I don't expect that I'm going to win the Guild vote. I didn't think I was. I actually figured that was exactly what was going to happen. So that's my answer to that. They have a tremendous amount of control over this.
So I've been here I'm the 3rd sheriff of the county since I've been here. And I'll tell you that for each sheriff, my opponent's had a problem with each sheriff. He's had a problem with each of the undersheriffs, he's had a problem with all the sergeants. I treat everybody with respect, and everybody respects me for that. I work hard, I give them, I provide a good place to work, we have good communication. Everybody that works for me, go up and ask them, talk to them. You all know them, they're working the streets. You know most of them, they come and eat dinner in your establishments, or they come to your house. Ask them what they think. Ask them what they truly think and how they truly feel the sheriff's office is being run and how it's being led. And I think that's really all there is to say about that. It's not go along to get along. I've never been that way, never will be, and nobody in my office will tell you that's the way it is.
Okay, another question in the back?
Earlier, Initiative 1639 was mentioned, and this arguably unconstitutional and horribly written initiative has the potential of turning many of your fellow citizens here on the island into instant criminals. It magically defines virtually every rifle as an assault weapon, a term that's imprecise and doesn't really exist in the real world. It requires things like annual training that you'll have to supervise. It basically is a first step toward gun registration and confiscation. And it's going to very much complicate the job of law enforcement. I'm aware that, I believe it's the Sheriff's Association and the Chief of Police Association have both come out strongly against this initiative. I just wonder if you'd care to comment on it and how it will complicate your job.
Sheriff Cripps, let's have you go first.
Yeah, so this is a bill that was written and put on the initiative without seeking input from law enforcement anywhere. The Washington State Sheriff's Association, WASPIC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, along with WACOPS, which is the union members in law enforcement, are all opposing this bill. I will tell you, vote against the bill. Don't pass the bill. They have got together, WASPIC, WACOPS, and the people who wrote the bill have got together since this bill was put on the initiative, and they've reworded it to something that makes more sense and satisfies the people who are actually trying to pass the bill. But because it was already put on the legislature, it has to stay. But they do have a second bill that makes sense. So that's why WASPIC, WACOPS, and the Washington Sheriff's Association is advocating that you don't vote for this bill.
Well, Ron is absolutely correct. I don't disagree with that at all. It's poorly written. It's unenforceable. And it, like you mentioned, it is the first step to taking your guns away. So I don't disagree with it at all.
In the red back.
Yeah, hi. Thank you both for being here. I'm 3 years new to the island, and I've been chatting with people around the island and regarding the drug problem here, and you stated that you've been in narcotics. So what are you doing on Orcas as far as being involved in getting your hands dirty? I'd love to be able to put a coalition together. I mean, our kids, our family, our friends are dying. And everybody's talking. It's time to put it together and talk in a group and get things done instead of trying to hook up with this person and connect with this person. Get everybody together who has knowledge and power to orchestrate and get it going and stop the talking in general. So how can we move forward on that? And I'd like to know what your background is on Orcas regarding the drugs.
Jeff, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, thank you. I've worked Orcas, but you never knew I was there. I actually was able to buy drugs on Orcas. And interestingly enough, a person came in when I was working detectives. I don't work narcotics now, I'm working out on patrol. But when I did work in narcotics, a person came to my office and said, hey, I want to join the dive team, of which I run. And after talking to this person for about 45 minutes, I said, like, no, you're not acceptable. A couple weeks later, a person calls me up and says, hey, do you want to go buy some cocaine on Orcas? Hey, I'm down for that. Went over, went to the front door. Guess who it is? The guy that was sitting in my office. He bought, and then he turned to me and goes, do you want some too? I go, absolutely. They're not smart. This is not smart. This is about having people on the ground to do it. It's not about asking you to write down license plates because we already know who it is. We just need to go after them. We need more people on the street is what we need. And that's why I'm advocating more reserves to help us out to break our permanent officers away so we can go and do something about this, and add a community service officer to help our officers break more time free. But we need time to do this. We want to have the interface with the public, because the public is the police and the police are the public. We need to interface with you to take care of these problems, and it is a problem, and Orcas Island has a problem.
Okay, so later on this year, we're going to have a canine, a drug canine. That's going to allow us to make more arrests, really, is what the K-9 is going to do. It'll allow us to interdict and get in touch with people who are addicts, really. And our hope is then, once we come in contact with them, make an arrest, get them into the therapeutic court, into the drug court, where they truly can get some help. The statistics show that the best time to help an addict is immediately after they're arrested or immediately after they have like an overdose. That's when they're most susceptible to help. If you just go up to them on the street one day, they may not want the help and they're probably going to turn you away. But once they have an overdose or once they're in jail, that's the best time to reach out to them. I'm also a very avid and enthusiastic supporter of prevention and education amongst our youth. I work very closely with the Prevention Coalition on Orcas Island. I'm working with the Coalition for Orcas Youth on Orcas Island. Trillium Swanson has started that. I think if we really want to affect change in community, you go after the kids. You reach out to the children early on and prevent them from ever going down that road to begin with. Then we continue dealing with the adults, trying to get them into a therapeutic court or get them into treatment, get them some help so they can break away from this. Because I agree, there's not a heroin addict out there that wants to be a heroin addict, but it's the heroin that is making them continue to do it. It's the heroin and the drug addiction that is saying, don't get help. Nobody wants to go through the withdrawals. Nobody wants to just live that life. So, that's my answer.
Another question. Black shirt?
Thank you. I have a question about the K-9 program. With a dedicated K-9 officer, since we already know who the drug dealers are, who the drug users are, and actually where most of the people stolen goods are, what additional benefit will the dog provide us that we are lacking at this time?
Sheriff Francis, I'll go first.
So as I said, the dog's going to allow us, when we make a traffic stop or we come in contact with someone, the dog's going to allow us to walk around the car, and if there's narcotics in the car, we'll know the narcotics in the car. You write a search warrant, then you can get into the car, get the narcotics out of the car, which ultimately gets that person into the justice system, which then can hopefully get them into, as I said, the therapeutic court. Currently, when we pull somebody over on just any traffic stop, we know who they are, but getting into the car is not always easy. If I pull you over, you have to have a probable cause to get into the car. We've had some success with that. We have a deputy now who actually last week just pulled somebody over and found methamphetamines in the car. But the vast majority of the people that we pull over will make a traffic stop. I can't just search your car without having a probable cause. The dog is that probable cause.
I love dogs. I got the smartest dog in the county, I'm sorry. Here's the deal though with dogs. If we bought a dog tomorrow, it's not necessarily going to match up with the handler. It will take a year to get that dog trained and then another 3 months to have it court certified. My idea here is not to have the county pay for the dog, but to have it financed through private donors. And if we're going to have a dog, we should cross-train it to protection only because our deputies are out there by themselves in the middle of the night. It would be far more useful to have one on Orcas and one on San Juan so that should we need backup immediately, we have that dog for them. Now, it's not going to last on all the shifts, but at least we have it on San Juan and Orcas. They're hugely expensive. Every year they have to go back for recertification at $1,200 a discipline. So if we're going to do protection and drugs, you're looking at $2,400. You're looking at the handler being out of pocket here in the county for months at a time till we get that dog trained. I'm not against the dog. I just don't think we should pay for it. And if we're going to do it, let's get protection as well because having lone officers out at night is not safe. In the 90s, we had 3 officers on till midnight, 2 on till 2 in the morning, now 1. What happened? It's dangerous. A dog would be helpful, very helpful.
This ties into that fundamental question in terms of budget. Do you have the budget to do your job?
Start with Jeff.
I don't know what Ron has negotiated with the dog, so to speak. However, there are certain grants we can get. There's certain things we can go to customs for as far as the dog. But the handler is going to have 5% more of his pay. And he has to work with that dog every single day for 20 minutes. Dog goes to the vet. It's expensive. There's a lot of money. Now, where we come up with that, that's why I'm saying private donors. There is a couple people on Orcas that have stepped up already that said they would like to donate to a dog. If somebody wants to pay for a dog, by all means, let's take advantage of that. But let's make sure it's going to be a long donation. They have to sign up for at least 5 years. We can't just have 1 year and then the handler and the dog go away. It's a commitment. We used to have a dog here, and it was a great thing. But I will also add with the dog does not make the case. The handler makes the case. The handler has to be trained.
To clarify, the question was in general, does the department have enough budget to do the job?
I'm going to turn over to Ron for that one.
Yes, we do. For the last 3 years, 4 including this year, I've not had to go back and ask for a budget amendment of any kind from the council. We operate prudently. We are fiscally responsible and operate well within our budget. So, and yes, I am negotiating for the drug dog. I've gotten the preliminary approval. We're getting the dog. I'm also asking for a third narcotics detective who will do nothing but narcotics and work with the canine handler and ideally possibly the schools and the administration staff in the schools. So.
Another question? Oh, in the middle here, red gloves.
So you talked about how, your department is so, loving, everyone in there is all on the same team. Going forward, assume you are elected again, how are you going to, show transparency as to, making sure across the board that everyone in the department has the same expectations held accountable, including yourself, all county policies? That there isn't someone singled out for just, health evaluation, and they're the only one, and yet it's presented as everyone has this expectation. How are you going to match that up of singling people out versus yourself included?
So, I know you're referring to your husband, and I would really love to talk to you offline about that. I don't know that we want to have that conversation in here. It's not appropriate. Everybody in my office is held to the same standard. Everybody. We'll continue to hold everybody to the same standard. Transparency, everybody's employee files are, certain portions of an employee file is open to the public. Anybody has any questions, you want to come in and sit down and talk, that's what I'm there for. That's why I'm here. I'm in town, I'm in the community. People want to talk to me, come talk to me. If you have questions, ask a question. Aside from that, I don't think this is the venue to, I'm sorry, this is not the venue to talk. And I would.
To the same standard?
Absolutely, I do.
So you follow all county policies currently?
Absolutely. I know you're also probably talking about this Facebook letter that came out in the papers. I will tell you that's a gross exaggeration and it is not accurate. Mr. McLeod wrote an article that is not correct.
Is the policy still 0?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Would you like to respond, Jeff? Or should we take one more question?
I'll respond. In response to your thing, I won't get into the details because I know that particular one as well. But I will tell you this, that if there is a policy, I will abide by that policy. You won't see me in my office watching movie trailers or being on Facebook.
Okay, one more question, then we'll move to closing remarks. Right here.
Yes, and listening to your description of why you would need a drug dog, it sounded like you were spearheading a direction. Hope I'm not barking up the wrong path or tree here. You directed the dog's purpose is going after the user. And I think we need to go and switch and go after the product. the supplier.
The supplier, yes.
I've treated probably more patients with Narcan than you've ever arrested. So I know the patient is not going to be easily remediated. But we need to start hitting these boats and whatever traffic is coming onto the islands. How are you going to use the dog to do that?
Let's actually start with Jeff first.
Well, the dog can be used limited like that. I do agree with you. Addiction is addiction. We need to work on the addiction portion of this and go after the people that are bringing drugs in. We have tips and leads all the time. We need to be able to jump on that right away and go after it. If somebody comes into the office and says they want to help, we need to jump on that. If somebody says there's a vehicle or a boat coming in, we need to be on that. Back in the late 90s and 2000s, we worked very closely with Customs. Matter of fact, they had the Blue Lightning program, and we were cross-designated as Customs agents so we could go after some of these people. And we were married up with Customs. Whenever we had an incident, they'd call us first because we were here on the island, and we'd be Johnny on the spot. And the beauty of that is, once they auction the boat off, they auction assets off, we profit share with them. The vessel, the Guardian, that we have, $100 and something thousand came from asset sharing. That was a case I worked when the Hells Angels were bringing in $300,000 into this through this community.
Well, so we put a lot of man hours on the boat. Let me actually address your question first. I apologize. We're going to go after drugs in general. Go after the dealers and go after the users. It's drugs in general. Everybody needs to stop and everybody needs to have attention paid to them. The dealers need to be stopped and the users need to be helped. The vast majority of the users that we have in our county are also dealers. They deal enough drugs to get their supply of drugs so that they can feed their addiction. So it's kind of one in the both, but we do need to go after both. As far as Customs goes, we put a lot of man hours on the boat doing drug interdiction on the water. Every year I get about $100,000 a year from the feds to put that boat that sits down at our port out on the water. And nearly every time we have a Customs agent on board with us that helps us get on board other boats and other vessels coming across the border. So we're out working to interdict the drugs that come over. Putting a dog on the boat would be also beneficial in going after those people that are bringing the narcotics into and through our county. Having a drug dog that can detect drugs on a boat would be huge. And that dog will be used in that way as well.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to closing remarks. So 2 minutes each, and we'll have Jeff go first.
I've heard what you've had to say. I've heard what you've had to say for the last 33 years that I've worked here. Drugs are an issue. We want to go after people that are bringing them in. We want to work on getting people off of drugs. We can't do it 100%, but we can sure put our best foot forward. We're not doing that right now. Transparency is an issue. Somebody mentioned back here about rules applying to everybody. They have to apply to everyone. And that's why I want a citizens advisory group that can work with us, that can help us come through some of these issues that we have within the department so that we know that the complaints that we get are truly being investigated and not just being done the good old boy way in the back room. I want people to know that we take their comments seriously. I want people to know that if they complain about an officer and we're trying to talk to that officer and the officer says, I want to know the name of that person. We're not giving you the name because I want a change in behavior. And that's why I want staff meetings to look you in the eye and say, this is the way we're doing business here in San Juan County. We're going after drug dealers and it's a spider web of crime that they commit. I heard somebody just the other day say it doesn't affect me, but it does. The shoplifting goes on in town, it affects you. The prices go up. Identity fraud and all these other things that are collateral with what? Drugs. So we do need to work on that.
All right, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming tonight. We truly have some amazing individuals working in the Sheriff's Office today. I couldn't be more proud at the guys that work in my office. Day in and day out, I say they're the ones that make me look good. You have to have respect for the leadership, and people have to want to follow the leader in order to have an effective office. If they don't respect the person that they're working for, they're never going to do the job. I have that respect. I have received the endorsement as one individual over here, Jeff, I think, said. It was overwhelming endorsement of the crew and the people that work for me. And I'll continue to find good people to work in our communities, because without good quality employees, then we're ineffective in our job. So I'm up here to ask for another 4 years as your sheriff to continue to build the department with the quality people that we have today and into the future. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to our last race, and that's the prosecuting attorney race. All right, so we'll start with a 3-minute opening statement, and Randy, I think we'll start with you.
Okay. Thank you for attending this forum put on by the League of Women Voters. I have the privilege of serving as your prosecuting attorney for 24 years, and I'm running for another term for several reasons. First, I love my job. There's never a dull moment in the prosecutor's office. The job suits me well. My hopeful, outgoing personality is something that really works for that job. And I have proven experience, and I brought together a terrific team of people who work in a cooperative environment. As one of the executives of the county, having 24 years of experience is very valuable. I bring institutional knowledge that's irreplaceable and a team of great experience in every aspect of the law: land use, real estate, criminal law, municipal law. Also, there's some of my background that I want to share with you that's helpful to being a prosecuting attorney. I'm one of 4 children, and that means I'm used to being in a big family. And that's very much what it's like, working with all the 11 elected officials, each with their own area of expertise and independence. You have 3 of us here tonight, but if you look through your voter pamphlet, you'll see all the others that are also on the ballot, some of them unopposed. And just like your brother or sister, those elected officials have independent authority. They choose who they hire. They choose who they fire, how they're going to discipline them. They choose how to spend their money, just like your own brothers and sisters choose who to marry and how to run a budget in their own household. So for me, I've lived on Orcas for 25 years. I'm married to my wife, Marnie, and we've had 2 children that have grown up there. It's really useful being married to a person who's a public school teacher, because those public school teachers bring a whole nother area of the community to you. Okay, my work involves, I'm the trial lawyer, the appeals lawyer, the administrative lawyer, the coroner, a problem solver, all of these different jobs I have. I stay fresh in the job by teaching. I've been a leader throughout the state in the Washington State Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, as well as the Washington Association of Counties. I know drugs is a big issue that people are talking about in the sheriff's race and these other races with the, and I want to address that and what my view on handling drug cases are. We handle every case that comes to our office. We want to be staffed well enough to do that. We've asked for money as needed to pay for that additional staffing, and we'll talk more about that during the question and answer.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Nick Power. I'm running for prosecuting attorney. I'd like to thank the league for putting this together, and I'm so happy to see so many of my neighbors here today with standing room only. That's a real testament to the community and how important the community thinks these races are. I've been an attorney since 1997. I practice in Friday Harbor, where I have a diverse civil practice and do some criminal defense work. If there was a theme to my work as an attorney, I would say I was a transparency attorney. I often represent people who have difficulties with employers and difficulties with governments, and that is part of my job, to go and represent them and criticize and point out what could be done better and how that situation can be resolved. I'm running for prosecuting attorney because of two things, and the first reason I'm running is because my wife and I moved here 10 years ago, and I've watched my daughter, who's now 11, and my other daughter, who is now 17, grow up here. And I have become very, very concerned with the increase and the blatant transaction of drugs, especially where kids are and where kids are congregating. I think we all know the hot spots, and everybody seems to know who these actors are, and I haven't seen any real leadership until election years where people say this is going to be a priority. I just haven't seen that, and I think that the prosecuting attorney's office is one of those offices, is the office in the county which prioritizes what we want to work on as a county and where we want to spend our resources for everyone and what is important to us. And I just haven't seen that. The second reason is really the civil side of things. As many of you know, I've been involved in a lot of litigation, some of it with the county. I've litigated all up and down the I-5 corridor. And we do have a transparency problem and an accountability problem in this county. And that is an elephant in the room. And there are people who are, treated unfairly at work, and there are code provisions that have been allowed to exist, which have been obviously unconstitutional. There are conflicts in the code. We need some fresh eyes to go through and look at the state of the law in the county and fix it. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions for our candidates? In the back here?
This question is for Mr. Power. You are running as a Democrat, and you sought the Democratic endorsement, and I believe in seeking that endorsement, you were not forthcoming about some important things. And they are as follows. You have represented Nick Power, who is a well-known
Let's stick with questions, not statements. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, what's your question?
Well, I'll tell you to do it. You're representing Nick Power, who sued the Democratic Party over 300 times. As a Democrat, I don't believe you're being honest when you say that you're a Democrat, but yet you can sue the Democratic Party numerous times.
Okay, first of all, I'm Nick Power, and I've never sued the Democratic Party. I think what you're referring to is a client that I represented who has brought campaign finance violation complaints against the Democratic Party. And that's true. I was forthcoming. It's always been a matter of public record that I represented this gentleman in that suit. Now, what I don't think is right is for an attorney, look, we have many, many clients and we represent many, many people. That is our job. We do not get the world outlook from our clients. If we did, we'd be schizophrenic, because I've had 500 clients. They all have different views from mine. What I do is I evaluate a case. I say, hey, does this case make sense? Are they doing something illegal? Okay, I'll take it. And in the case we're talking about, the Democratic Party actually hid over $100,000 from its required disclosures. And those cases, we have not lost a single case in that battery of cases. And if there's some sort of litmus test about who I should sue or who I shouldn't sue based upon their political proclivities, that's great. Don't vote for me, because I'm not about that. I'm not about wielding the office as a partisan tool. I have only given to Democratic candidates. I myself am a Democrat. I'm married to a very staunch Democrat. If you look at up on the federal giving, you will see I've only given to Democrats.
Randy, do you want to respond?
No, I know the question was to Mr. Power.
All right. Next question, Bob?
Yes. I was wondering how many years, Mr. Power, have you been in practice in Washington State? And what is the size of your office? Not in square footage, but in people.
I'm a sole practitioner. I've practiced in Washington since it was spring of 2013.
Okay, another question? In the back?
This is Mr. Power. Back to the subject of litigation. I understand you've got about 7 claims or lawsuits against San Juan County that can amount to a total of over $10 million. If you're elected, what happens to those lawsuits? What's going to be the direct and indirect consequences of those suits and the cost to the county?
Randy, you want to take this one? First of all, your figure is wildly off. I don't have 7 pieces of litigation in the county. I think I have 2, 3? You'd know better than I. And in those cases, we have conflict rules. And if, attorneys represent different clients all the time. And what happens is that you will be screened and you are unable to represent a party in that case that you have litigated against that party. And so my former clients will, and we started working on a secession process, will hire other counsel, and other counsel will take over, and they'll get the file, and then I will not work on those cases when elected. Really, when the amount of workload that is represented by those cases of the things that the prosecuting attorney does is pretty small. So outside counsel will handle those, and frankly, all those cases are being handled by outside counsel, so it won't be any increase in cost, and things will continue on as usual.
Randy, do you want to respond?
I think that answer is incomplete. The reason is this: he will not be able to represent any of the clients against San Juan County, and he cannot represent San Juan County against any of those clients. He'll have confidential information that he would have to share. Those files will have to be removed from the prosecutor's office. He cannot help in the defense of any of those cases. You will lose an elected official helping out in the defense of all of those cases. And there are 7, because you should include not only lawsuits, but also claims. One claim for $10 million has been brought by Gerald Grillick Tinner. Other claims have been assessed for $2 million and more. $12 million is a starting point. There are 7 cases. One just got resolved today, favorably to the county. That's $1 million off the table. But that was another one.
Okay, another question here.
Randy, I'd just like to ask, what broke down in the vetting process with Detective Parker?
Appreciate you asking that. The prosecuting attorney's office is not involved in the vetting process. The vetting process began in October under Sheriff No. And Sheriff No used a variety of pre-employment questionnaires, as well as used his undersheriff to ask questions as to Detective Parker's former employers, the United States Air Force and the Choteau County Sheriff's Office. And so all of those, about a dozen people were contacted. A very thorough vetting process goes into place because there's a big commitment to hire a sheriff, and we're going to send them to training. To my knowledge, none of that vetting process that occurred prior to him being offered a job in October had anything negative to say about Detective Parker. And that was the vetting process that occurred. He was then offered a job, and the onboarding process began. And during that onboarding process, I was asked to call the Choteau County District Attorney. And on the day I was asked to call, I had hurt my knee. I was out of state on a family holiday, and I had hurt my knee, and very, very badly. And I was just checking my email, and on Christmas Day, I handed it off to a deputy in my office to follow up and make a phone call to the DA in Choteau County. That phone call, to the best of my knowledge, was made. If it didn't get made, that's all on me, because I'm responsible for the deputies in my office. And when I returned to the office on the 6th of January, Detective Parker had started, and he had been assigned the job. And the information I had was that had been resolved. So as to what happened beyond that, what Detective Parker did was concealed. And so it was not revealed, or would not have been revealed, in the vetting process.
Nick, do you want to respond?
Sure, just a few factual cleanups on that timeline. It's undisputed that the sheriff emailed Prosecutor Gaylord identifying both the name and the content of the information which would give absolute rise to question the ability of Parker to be a reasonable officer. The fact that we still don't know if the deputy prosecutor actually called up the sheriff's or the prosecutor's office in Choteau County to this day is appalling. We should know that fact now. And that is a huge failing, because if we don't know that fact, and we don't know about what communications in this office and in the sheriff's office are actually happening, so that we can find out who these dirty cops are before we hire them, that's a problem. And I have a problem about that. And I also have a problem when it is represented to the county council and the public that there was no indication that he was a problem. It was, and you knew it.
Okay, I have a question from an audience member in writing, and this is for Nick Power. You've alleged widespread use of hard drugs in our schools, some allegedly by your children, but you have never filed a complaint with any of the schools or the...
Can I just clarify that? I have never alleged that my children have done drugs in the school.
Okay.
Could you start that again?
The question is, why not? Why have you not filed a complaint?
Why have I not filed a complaint?
Yes.
With who?
The sheriff's office.
I thought I wouldn't file a complaint because I don't know who the perpetrators are.
Another question?
Somebody asked you a bit ago about how much staff you have in your office, and I understand that San Juan County has over 200 employees. How are you going to make that transition from being a sole proprietor to managing an entire county? All the elected officials And I think you're a little bit naive when you think something like Parker couldn't just squeak through from just what happens. I think you're holding
Is that a
Randy
question or a
accountable for
statement?
something that's, what?
Is that a question or a
My
statement?
question is, that is a statement, I apologize. But you do have to manage a very big team of people.
I think that's a totally fair question, and I will say this. I've worked on lawsuits which have 5 lawyers per side. I'm currently involved in litigation which has no fewer than 14 attorneys that are of counsel and on record. That is a huge amount of people to keep track of and information to keep track of. I think that I will lead by example. My word is my bond, and I think it is time for more transparency and fairness to the employees in San Juan County. I have represented employees who've had grievances in San Juan County, and I think I understand some of the breakdowns that occur in the county where employees have been treated unfairly. And I think that that has provided me with a good deal of insight into what could be done better in the county as far as managing employees.
Respond?
You know, I'd like to talk to you briefly here about my leadership style. Because I'm a leader who believes if there's a problem made in a prosecutor's office, and believe me, we make hundreds of decisions weekly. We are involved in so many things. Mistakes are going to happen from time to time. We own those mistakes. We look for a way to fix them, and then we build on that so that they don't get repeated. I also have a leadership style in working with other elected officials. This is not something that I just arrived at moving from one office to another. I moved from an office in Spokane with 9 of 15 lawyers, and before that with 40 lawyers. And I've learned many different ways of working with other people. As I said, it's like a big family at the county. And I'm very effective at this because I know how to collaborate with other people. I look for opportunities for, and I talk about this leadership style based upon the book Synchronicity, where you stay connected with people and communicate and listen for opportunities to come up. And when the opportunities come, you are prepared and you strike at that moment, being mindful of what everyone wants. And then you reflect back on what's being done. And I've used that very effectively over the years. So for example, in the Barefoot Bandit case, where I saw that restitution was going to be awarded to people and shared equally, and there were these big airplane values, I recommended it go through the federal courts. And in the federal courts, they paid the people who didn't have insurance companies first. I was listening, I'm leading, I'm dealing with that. And then I went the next step. I said, we need to change Washington state law to apply just like that. It took a couple of years. I worked through the associations. I worked through the various interest groups, and that law was changed this last year to give that priority so victims come first in Washington state. Thank you.
Okay, let's take your question.
This relates to Randy's comment about making hundreds of decisions in a week. We're learning more and more how prosecutors are the place where the agenda and often the strategy of cases gets set by the decisions you make to bring various bills and charges against people. My question is, how do you know you're being fair? And, you know, most people say, we give it our best shot and we try to correct our mistakes when we find them. But the question really is, we see in the national news so much bias, various kinds of biases, I'm not going to name them. My question is there anything that you do to check you and your staff? And also, Nick, what would you do to check you and your staff to assure us, not that you're using your best judgment, but that you're actually being fair?
This is the best question I've ever had at a forum, okay? This is what the job is all about. Because I check myself and I try to find what it is to be fair by evaluating several things. It's something that's inherent in me as a person, and I'm always striving and talking to other people to double check that on the difficult cases. On the difficult cases, I will consult with other prosecutors. I go to trainings and I listen to how they resolve the cases, what the evidence means. I evaluate the facts of the case. I look at what happens. I try to be blind to who the offender is and try to set aside this kind of bias. We've been trained more and more recently about implicit bias that sneaks in, that we all have to be aware of. We talk about it within the office. I'm fortunate we have an office of 5 people where we can address those things frankly and encourage that kind of one-on-one discussion so that we look for those kind of issues. And then we test it against juries, because if we are making the right decision, we're making on criminal cases, we are predicting what a jury will do, and we predict what a jury, in terms of making those charges. That's the standard we have. Our standard is what will a jury likely do in finding beyond a reasonable doubt what the outcome of the case would be. So we're evaluating evidence, we're evaluating what a jury will do, and then we test it by going to trial from time to time. And after the trial, we'll talk to the jurors, we'll find out where the weaknesses are. And there's a feedback loop that's always in place in our office to test our guts and to keep moving on to the next case. And that has worked well for the last 24 years. We're always mindful of ways to improve it, and look forward to that.
So I think that was a great answer about what you do in your own office. But I think that in addition to playing that Socratic, having that Socratic discourse with your colleagues and other people in the field, as a prosecutor, you really are the conscience of the community, and that really requires dialogue with the public. And one of my criticisms of the prosecutor's office is that it's a very cloistered office, and I want to change that. I am going to put up on my first day in January a sign-up sheet, and that sign-up sheet will be on that door, and it will be on that door throughout my tenure at the office. And it will have slots every week where anyone can come and discuss any problem that they're having with the county, as long as they're not a represented party and we have attorney-client problems. This will allow me to really gauge what is happening in the community and to be able to nip problems before they become big problems. If they say, hey, we're not getting these public records, we think the U.S. public records, great. We want to end that problem as soon as it starts. And so I think, to answer your question, it's really important to involve the voice of the community, because you're making these incredibly serious and incredibly consequential decisions. And I think that needs to happen.
Okay, let's move to closing remarks, and Nick will have you go first. Yep.
I just pretty much said everything I wanted to say. Okay, so I think we can do better here in this county, and I think that I will concede that Mr. Gaylord has been a prosecutor for over 2 decades, a generation, and I think that is an asset for the reasons he's described, but I also think it's a liability. I think it's a liability because it's good to have new voices and new ideas come into an office. I think that having an office that is occupied by one person for that long, especially in a small community like this, lends itself to having too many relationship problems and too many situations which are compromised by relationships. I don't plan on being a prosecutor for 24 years. If I'm a prosecutor here in 24 years, something has gone very, very wrong. I don't need this job, but I want this job because I really think I can make San Juan County a better place to live, a safer place to live, and a fairer place to live.
All right. Thank you for the good questions. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I hope this session has allowed you to see some of the differences between the candidates, and particularly to see the experience and qualifications that I bring to the job. When I look across this room and think about the next 4 years, I want to share what I see. I see a community that is safe and feels safe. I see a government that is responsive to its citizens, just as it is today, and even better. I see citizens served by highly qualified, competent attorneys who know this community and who are at the top of their professional lives, always striving for excellence. I see a local government that is open to others with diversity in ideas and thinking and willing to accept new approaches. I see a local government that is inclusive of other cultures and mindful of immigrants. I see a prosecutor's office that puts people who are harmed first, and honesty, integrity, and the rule of law ahead of all else. I share these visions with you so that you can share it too with yourself and others and make it your hope for a better community. I'm endorsed by the San Juan County Democrats, Rick Larson of the U.S. Congress, Attorney General Bob Ferguson, Senator Kevin Ranker, Representatives Chris Litton, and Jeff Morris. If you need more information, I have a robust website at www.teamgaylord.com. I'd like to share on Facebook. Please join me. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank all of you for attending, and don't forget to vote.
Rick takes you in first.
I think that's